Hello and welcome to another Patreon-only video for Enchantment of Eternity's Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. Very much appreciated. So, here to talk about Star Trek The Animated Series, getting into episodes 3 and 4 of Season 1. So, I already did my preamble about the animated series, so let me jump straight into the episodes. So, start with episode 3. One of our planets is missing. And I always thought, I remember seeing this title, and it's because there was a period of time where in the 90s where I was really into Star Trek, but I didn't have access to the animated series because it wasn't on television at the time. I think it was on Nickelodeon in the late 80s, early 90s, but by the time I got into Star Trek, I missed it, and it wasn't on Nickelodeon anymore, and they couldn't find it to rent anywhere. I could buy a VHS of it for $15 that had 2 episodes on it. That was way too expensive for me. Maybe it had 4 episodes, but it was still way too expensive. So I couldn't watch it, and I remember looking at some of these titles and thinking, oh, this sounds very interesting. Oh, this sounds amazing. I sort of hyped it up in my mind to be this forbidden fruit that was really awesome that I couldn't get access to. But once I finally did watch it, I was like, oh, that's kind of boring. But, the thing is, they came out with these novelizations of the head, a novel. They didn't even call it the animated series. It was a series called, The Lost Adventures, or Lost Stories. But really, it was just a novelization of every episode of the animated series, and I bought that, and I read some of the episodes that looked interesting to me, and yeah, this is actually really boring. So my excitement for the animated series died down then. But anyway, I remember looking at that title, One of Our Planets is Missing. I was like, wow, that sounds fascinating. That sounds like it's something really unique. But it's not, and I think this is a very inappropriate title for the episode, because basically this is just a bland, average episode about a cloud going to kill everyone. Ooh. And even because it's a lot more typical and cliche now after all the other Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, especially Voyager. But even when this first aired, it is very similar to the Immunity Syndrome. I kept getting flashbacks to that episode, and also Doomsday Machine, the whole thing about a planet killer that's going to destroy a planet and the Enterprise has to stop it. But the things that because this episode is derivative of so many other episodes, so many other episodes came to mind of Voyager and even the original series, and maybe some Next Generation in there. But the two things that struck out the most to me actually came out after this episode, so it does make you wonder if those other episodes borrowed from this, or if it's just such a cliche type stereotypical episode of Star Trek that it's just the writers going back to that anomaly. Anomaly's gonna kill you. But the two episodes that remind me most of, first one is not an episode, it's Star Trek The Motion Picture. Now, because if you're not familiar with this episode, basically what happens in this episode, that this giant living cloud eats a planet. And they're like, oh shit, it was an uninhabited planet, but then it starts moving towards an inhabited planet where there's a Federation colony with shitloads of people. And so Kirk freaks out, and so he has to fly into this giant cloud, and they find out it's alive, so they go through the different parts, and they relate it to the human body. I think it was a sneaky way for the animated series to try to sneak in some biology lessons for the kiddies, but it was drenched in technobabble, so I don't know if it was that effective. But anyway, so they have to fly through this cloud forever, and they want to destroy it to save this planet. but they realize that they can't. That even destroying it won't save it. So instead, Spock mind melds with it and reasons with it and gets it to back off. I think the writer, I think Gene Roddenberry or whoever wrote the motion picture came up with the concept was borrowing very heavily from this episode. Just my opinion. Like the whole thing about a giant cloud, like that's going to kill a planet, and of course in the motion picture it was Earth rather than a random Federation colony, but still, and then the Spock wanting to mind meld with it. They did that in the motion picture. I mean, it didn't do the whole thing about V'ger or whatever. That was something totally different. But still, the whole plot about this huge. And this episode, watching it reminded me of the motion picture because most of the motion picture is just scenes of the Enterprise going through this giant cloud, going dun dun. That got so boring. And this episode was a lot like that. It was the Enterprise going through this cloud, they go roo roo, and McCoy's like, oh look, that's the intestines, or that's the thing. They're acting like blah blah blah. Here's your biology lesson, kids. And it was really boring. Now, the other episode it reminded me of that you might have been able to guess if you're familiar with this episode is the Voyager episode, The Cloud, which was also about the starship going inside a cloud and finding out it's alive and it's living and they have to deal with it. Now, there's huge differences in that episode because in that episode the cloud wasn't endangering a planet, it wasn't even malevolent. In fact, Janeway herself found out that she hurt the cloud and that she needed to heal it. So it's different in that regard, but still very similar about the whole living cloud, living organism. Or whatever. But I guess just overall this is such a derivative idea. As I said, even like episodes like the Immunity Syndrome, Doomsday Machine, I'm sure there's a couple others in the original series I'm not thinking of. That it's just, yeah. So the title is One of Our Planets is Missing. I thought it was like really a planet would disappear and people were like, ooh, where is it? But no, it's just about a killer cloud that ate the planet. So I don't know. I found that really disappointing. And the episode itself, like, I would say because of the animated format, it's a kind of lesser version of all those episodes I mentioned. Because it's all those episodes are, any Star Trek episode will have character stories or character interactions intermixed to heighten. Like Doomsday Machine's a great example because you got the whole storyline of the captain or Commodore Decker who's suffering from PTSD and he lost his whole crew and he's trying to take over the Enterprise and Spock against his better judgment. Like it had that strong character story involved, where here it's probably a combination of the result of that this is supposed to be simplified for kids and also that it's a shorter runtime. It's like half hour. They don't have time for any character stuff, and I'm finding that on most of the episodes. I think Yesteryear was a huge exception to that, but of course I'm only 4 episodes in, so I don't know about the rest of the show. I know I've watched it before, but it's been a long time. Anyway, so this episode was like, it's like Immunity Syndrome, it's like the motion picture, it's like The Cloud, but take away all character elements or character stories in Doomsday Machine, but just suck out any character interactions. It's just plot and nothing else. And that's boring. I mean, the concept is boring enough, having the ship go through a cloud very slowly and be like, oh, look, that's the thing that acts like your immunity system and blah, 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 blah. And this episode was loaded to the brim with technobabble. I talked about this in the last time I did the animated series. I have a feeling that's going to be a common thread in the animated series, and from memory it was. But this episode so far is like a huge offender of that. It's like this could have been called Technobabble the episode. Anyway, yeah, so it's just all plot. There's no character interactions whatsoever, so it's definitely a lesser version than all those other things. And also, when I was watching this, I was thinking, God damn, this is pretty heavy for a kid's show. Because they had this, like, Kirk contacts the governor of the Federation colony, whom I think he knows, and he's like, Tim or Chris, whatever his name is, and it's like, this cloud's coming to kill you. It's like, we have 48 million people here. There's no way we're going to evacuate them in 12 hours, or however long it was. And Kirk's like, well, what are you going to do? Well, the only thing we can do, we're going to evacuate the kids. Evacuate the children. And then Kirk calls him later while the cloud is like just minutes away from destroying the thing, and he was like, did you get anyone out? He's like, well, we got 50,000 kids away, but that's all we could do. The rest of the kids are screwed with us. That's pretty fucking heavy shit for a kid's cartoon, don't you think? I think so. Like, this giant, like, cloud is coming to kill everyone. There's going to be mass murder, and people are going to die by the millions, and we have to evacuate the children. But thank God we got the children away, and we're so desperate, and there's mass hysteria, and people are, like, fighting each other, and it's like, dude, this is supposed to be a cartoon, isn't it? And here's for kids. I guess most of the hysterics and the really gritty, dark side of it is implied, and so that probably will go over most kids' heads, which I kind of understand. But still, you had the thing with the governor being like, well, we saved the children, and that's the best we can do. I'm like, damn, that's pretty dark for a kid's show. If you're asking me. And the final scene where Spock does the mind meld, and I was still thrown off by how they get all the actors and actresses who are the main cast members to do all the guest voices as well. So the guest voice was very obviously Nigel Barrett. It just sounded a bit silly. Oh, you... And eventually Spock just said, hey, we're alive. Don't kill us. And this is the way they were talking. It was like, listen to me, alive. People are alive. Alive? You're too small. Like, that was very nerve-wracking. I'm sorry. Trying to be all sci-fi like. And so, like, all Spock has to be like, oh, hey, we're alive. And she's like, oh, you are? Well, okay, I don't want to kill you then. I'll just fuck off to where I go. And that's the end of it. Basically, some paraphrasing, of course. But that's it. Yeah, I don't know. I'd rather have V'ger, if I'm being honest. So, my rating for One of Our Planets is Missing is going to be a 3. Very poor. Somewhat interesting. They had high stakes, but it was just boring. And just technobabble the episode with no character interaction whatsoever. Anyway, let me get into the next episode, which is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but the Lorelei Signal, or Lorelei, whatever it is. So this is a very interesting episode. It's if it came out in present times, a lot of people on the internet would call it the SJW. SJW's taking over Star Trek. Ah! But because in this episode, the Enterprise is lured into the trap by this planet of women who suck the energy out of men. So it makes all the men on the ship all like, ooh, la, la, la. Like, they even have Scotty, like, singing songs on the bridge going, oh, la, isn't that lovely? And so all the men start going crazy, but the women aren't affected, so they're the only ones who are reasonable. And then Kirk and Spock and a bunch of men beam down, and they're, of course, like, ensnared by the women, and they start draining and sucking their energy, and so they want to plan to get the rest of the men down. But Horror takes command of the Enterprise, so the women basically take command of the Enterprise, and then Spock manages to get a signal out to him, and he's like, oh, bring a security team, but all female. So you see a group of women beam down with phasers, and they start just like phasering the fuck out of these other women, and they're like, it's so weird because the head female, as she called herself, but she's not a male Ferengi, so I don't know what she's referring to herself as a female. But anyway, the head female said that, oh, when Horror beamed down, she's like, oh, I am blah blah blah, I am here. You're not welcome here. I'm like, well, why'd you introduce yourself first if she's not welcome here? And again, all these like Lorians or whatever the hell they called the women there, are all voiced by Majel Barrett. I think maybe a couple might have been voiced by Michelle Nichols. I think Michelle Nichols voices a couple of the security women as well. But anyway, so yeah, that's still off-putting to me. But so yeah, so that's why the SGWs, because it's all about how the women had to take over and the men were useless, and the women beamed down with phasers and just started kicking ass and like shooting everyone, and they saved the day. And like when they're on the ship, like Scotty was being like an idiot, like last, and the horror had to be like, go away, you stupid male, and take over. SJWs, I'm telling you. Oh god, that's such a meaningless term. But anyway, it's such a bullshit term. I mean, people just do it for clickbait. But anyway, off topic. So I actually thought that was really cool, to be honest. And if you're reminded of another episode that I would say that this really reminds me of, it would be a Voyager episode, the Voyager episode Favored Son. And so it does make me wonder if they borrowed from this episode when they came up with the idea, or if it's just such a cliche idea, because it's very similar. Because if you don't remember that episode, Harry Kim was lured to this planet, and he said he was one of them, but it was just, and the planet was all women. There was a couple dudes hanging out there, like they get to hang out with like 4 or 5 chicks that all want to marry him, and but then Harry Kim finds that they suck the energy out of all the men and kill them, and that's the real reason why they want it. Because that's how this episode starts. The episode starts with Kirk and Spock and everyone thinking they're going to get laid, and they get like images of women, beautiful women going, and they just lure them into a trap so they can suck their energy out. And that's Favored Son, basically. So Favored Son basically just ripped this episode off. I think so. I mean, maybe not, because this is such a derivative idea. I think I have seen similar things in cartoons when I was a kid, but it's been so long I don't remember it very well, like from the 80s and whatnot. I'm sure there must, because this seems so familiar to me, yet I'm almost certain I never saw this episode until I was an adult. So there must have been other cartoon episodes I've seen that was similar to like damn SJWs. But anyway, I actually thought that was cool, the female aspect of it, the fact that this is a huge thing. If you consider the animated series canon, then this is the only time Lieutenant Uhura took command of the Enterprise. I think my brother talked about in his review of the original series how Uhura never even gets command of the Enterprise. When everyone else is gone, they just get some stupid lieutenant we never heard of, Joe Smo, credits the Navy beings that come up and take command for her. But here, I guess this came out a decade later, so maybe it was more progressive then. She does. She takes command. She beams down with the security team. She kicks ass. She fixes the ship when all the men are incapable of doing it. And to be perfectly honest, I liked it. I think it's about time we see Uhura in a command position like this. So I like it for that regard. So they did do it. I mean, not in the actual original series. It was the animated, but they did do it. And the other thing that's interesting is that, people always talk about how the phrase "beam me up, Scotty" was never spoken on the original series. In this episode, they didn't say "beam me up, Scotty," but Spock said "beam us up, Scotty." It's closer. I think it's close enough. I was like, he did say "beam us up, Scotty," but it's not "beam me up, Scotty," but still close enough. I think so. Anyway, so I thought this episode was mildly entertaining. I thought it was a bit silly because when Kirk and Scotty and not Scotty, whoever was on the planet, Kirk, McCoy, Spock, when all of them were running from the evil women that wanted to consume them, they hid inside this giant urn. Why is there a giant urn in the middle of the field? It's a bit weird. But they hit inside it, and all the women's like, oh, where are they? Oh, we don't know. Let's just go back inside. And then, because they desperately wanted to find them because they wanted, to suck out all their energy. And so they go back inside, and they're like, who cares? And then later in the episode, or when a horror takes over and shoots them all and orders them around and tells them to find Kirk, they went to the little screen thing. Is like, reveal the men from the Enterprise, and the computer just shows them a picture of Kirk. What if they could do that the whole time? Why didn't they fucking do that before when they were looking for Kirk? And also, just the whole language, every time they talk to that computer thing, which they have to hum to get it to come, they go, it's very annoying. And they just speak, instead of saying, can show me where this person, or it's a computer, where is this person, or they just go, reveal. It's like they're speaking to a fantasy god or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, but it's the animated series. I actually think this episode does work a lot better as an animated, particularly better than the last one. The last one I think was too heavy for an anime, and it doesn't work as an animated show because they have to cram too much in a 20-minute time period, and they have to boil it down to be kid-friendly so it's not too complicated. It just doesn't work. And it's just there's mass panic and people are killing each other because they're only letting children leave the planet because everyone's going to fucking die. That's too heavy for a kid's show. This is pretty much, as I said, I think there actually were a lot of cartoons that did this plot. So this is perfect for a kid's show in my opinion. I think this really works in the format that they set it out for. But still, again, this is a kid's show, of course, but it is a bit simplistic and has it can get a bit silly at times. But anyway, my rating for the Lorelei Signal out of 10 is a 7. I'm close to giving it an 8, but I think I'm not going to get too excited here. I'm going to give it a 7. Very good. Yeah. Is a decent episode. It's not amazing. It's still kind of silly. Like I said, the whole why did they just find Kirk in the first place, and the whole thing with Scotty singing on the bridge. Oh, la, 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 la. Okay, that was a bit silly, but I actually thought it was an interesting episode. It worked for the format, and I liked seeing a horror in command finally. And yeah, I did like that they had all women security team beating down and just kick everyone's ass, because that's something the original series would never do. Anyway, damn SJW. Anyway, that is it for my review of the animated series, Season 1, Episodes 3 and 4. I'll be back in a month to cover the next 2 episodes, so thank you guys so much for supporting the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.